right, and now we are speaking with Johan Amelmark, and he is a former recipient of the Fan Fund. Johan, thanks for coming on and being with us for this video.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So it was the Transatlantic Fan Fund, or TAF, that you had participated in. Which Worldcon was that?
The goal for the target, the destination convention was the Worldcon 2018 in San Jose, but there was a race for that, which went on during the year before the con, and then everything was settled in the spring, and I had made my bookings, etc. So then I went to San Jose, yeah, by way. But the TAF is really about meeting fans along the way as well. So I made a 1 month trip. Normally you make something like a really long trip. TAF is a different fan fund. So I went to Canada, and I went to Seattle, I went to Minnesota, to Minneapolis, and to different places to meet fans, and then I ended everything in San Jose at the Worldcon.
Well, that sounds like it was a really nice trip.
It was fantastic, meeting people, some of whom I've met before, some of whom I've never met before, meeting fans. I mean, everyone was family. I stayed with fans in their homes and got to see people, have fun, parties.
Well, that's part of the whole Worldcon experience, right?
It is. I mean, to me, conventions are basically social events. I mean, you get to meet people, make new friends, meet old friends. I mean, it's a huge party where you get to have lots of interesting conversations.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, tell us a little bit about how you heard about TAF and how you made application to the fund.
As I said, TAF is different. TAF started in the 1950s. So I think I heard about TAF the first time in the 1980s when I was new in fandom, when people were campaigning to get votes. Because what you do is that you just raise your hand and say, okay, I'm running. And there's no formal application for it. So, and then you end up on a ballot, and then you campaign for several months, and it's a huge vote in fandom. And anyone who can give $5 or something like that has a right to vote if you're a fan, and the winner gets to go to the convention. But that's how it happened.
All right. Well, which fan fund? I've been under the impression it was TAF. I apologize. But which one was it that you went to San Jose under?
TAF.
Oh,
that was TAF. Yes.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, talk a little bit about the overall experience. You said that you had gone for about a month through this, and you were able to visit a number of different places. Just tell us about that, please.
Before I went, I wrote to people, and some people approached me actually offering a bed to stay, and I made an itinerary and decided where to go, who to visit. So it's like making family, making friends, and finding fandom is an extended family in some ways, and this is an excellent way of extending that and meeting new people. So I picked places that sounded interesting and places that were offering me to come and stay, and then everything ended at the Worldcon, which was the huge event. And it's quite different to attend a Worldcon as a fan fund delegate, because people will know who you are. People will have made preparations for you before you come. So it's a really welcoming experience.
Mm-hmm. Would you recommend being a fan fund delegate to somebody who is interested in attending Worldcon?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's a great way of going to a con. And I think the kind of fan fund where you are applying to it to get a membership and some place to stay, etc. I think it's a great way if you're not familiar with Worldcons. I mean, it's a fantastic opportunity. I would definitely recommend it.
Are you going to be able to attend Discon III?
We don't know that yet, depending how the pandemic goes and other things. I mean, politically, I would feel more comfortable in the US next year than I did in 2018, I think, without saying too much. But I mean, I would hope so. I mean, it would be fun. I've never been to a Worldcon in the US except the one in 2018. So, and I have lots of friends who are going to be there, who are actually working on the con as well. So I can hope, but I don't know yet.
Well, I'm going to keep my fingers crossed, because now you know one other person who is working on Discon.
Yeah.
And I would love to be able to see you, and I hope that circumstances allow you to travel to the United States and Washington next year for this show.
I would love to do that.
We're talking to Alan Stewart. Alan is a Down Under Fan Fund delegate from 1994. Alan, thank you so much for being with us.
Fine, Ulysses. Yes, it was 1994, and that was when I went to the Worldcon. Was in Canada that year at Canadian in Winnipeg.
Well, please tell us about your experience.
Yeah, so I did a lot of the arranging from Australia by email. At the time, I'd been publishing a newszine called Time, THYME, and quite a few copies went to people in North America. And so when I was running, I had nominators, of course, from North America. And then when I finally won, a lot of people I contacted were like on the list or knew me through my fanzine and were interested in meeting me. And so part of my address book and connections came in handy arranging accommodation. And I found that when I worked at the cities I wanted to go to, nearly everyone I contacted was quite happy for me to crash or put me up in their place. Or if they couldn't, if it didn't work in, they'd know somebody else, another fan in the city, that would be quite happy to accommodate me. So, for instance, Mark and Priscilla Olsen in Boston, I stayed with them a couple of nights. Then the last night I was there, they had some other things, so I moved on to Morris and Laurie's place for the one night there. And I found that, just welcoming fans in virtually every city where I tended to go from like city to city rather than seeing much of the countryside. But some of the arrangements, being a bit naive, it's my second overseas trip, and I've realised in hindsight I was a bit naive, and I found out in North America you had something called overbooking with air flights, which at the time I'd never experienced in Australia. But fortunately, I was warned by fans, and they said, no, you've got to get to the airport earlier just in case, and things like that. And so didn't come a cropper of it, but it was fine. And heading towards Winnipeg, I'd arranged to be driven with fans from Minneapolis up to Winnipeg. And it turned out that was actually probably quite fortunate, because I hadn't realised that the flights into Winnipeg were quite limited, and some fans had trouble getting flights into there during the time. So that was interesting, and things you don't think about at the time as being a problem, but it turned out okay. And so at Winnipeg, I was the Dove delegate, and I remember during the opening ceremony, I was introduced as one of the guests of the convention. So I was up on stage there with fellow guests, like Anne McCaffrey, who I've been reading for years, and I can't remember who the other exact guests were, but so that was good, and that was nice of the convention to put that forward to me to be up there. And at the convention itself, I was on a few panels. I can't remember exactly which ones, but they did have things like a particular ribbon for me, which had Duff Winner on it. So that was nice to go on the badge. And thanks to Dick and Leah Smith, who were nominated for a Hugo that year, they invited me along as their guest to go to the Hugo pre-ceremony and the actual Hugo ceremony itself. Unfortunately, I didn't get to present a Hugo. That sometimes happens with fan fund delegates, but as it was Canadian, they decided that all their presenters would be from Canada, which was fair enough and their prerogative. So, but I still got to sit, with the nominees in the ceremony and things like that. I've in my trip report, I was going to have it was going to be based on sort of games and activities and puzzles. And one of the things I was going to do was photocopy my badge and its ribbons and sort of make it like a jigsaw puzzle on one of the pages. But that's still in the planning stages. Speaking of the trip report, a few things have been published here and there, but there's still a lot still on the drawing board, and I haven't got around to finishing it. So, but I do know that my the ribbons, I ended up having 2 red, 2 white, and then 2 blue. So it was sort of like red, white, and blue hanging off the badge, and that was probably my second introduction to ribbons, because we didn't really do them in Australia at conventions at all in 1994. But I found out that, yeah, well, they were there at Worldcon, and since then, over the years, I've done a lot more. So, in the end, the trip sort of developed into a couple of things. There was me visiting people I knew through my fanzine and corresponding with, and visiting various cities. And at the time, we were also starting the promotion for Australia in '99, which was the bid for the Worldcon in 1999. So even though it was 5 years out, I did do some promoting for that convention with other fans who were staying within the US. So that was interesting. At the time, I was also a postgraduate student at Melbourne University. And on part of my trip, I'd arranged to visit someone at another university in the capital of which one's Chicago? Illinois. It must be Chicago's in Illinois, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. So I'd arranged to go to the University of Illinois, but which wasn't actually in Chicago. It's a bit further south. Now I've gone completely blank on the town. But that also leads to a interesting anecdote in that. So I left Chicago, took the train down to this city, and did my visiting. And while I was there, I'd had the phone number from Bob or Wilson Tucker, who lived in a city not too far away. And I rang him up and said who I was, and said, would it be okay if I caught the bus up and crashed at his place? Totally unexpected, but he said fine. So that was an added bit to the trip. So I ended up sort of crashing the night at Bob and Fern Tucker's, which I hadn't planned on doing originally. But it's one of those things, sometimes you never totally plan trip, but then sometimes you can have impromptu things, which if the opportunity comes up, you're glad to take. And in retrospect, I'm very glad I took that opportunity. And I'd bought a couple of secondhand books while I was on that day, and I ended up trading one of those for a book from him. So he gave me the 5th Stage of Fandom, and I gave him a AE Merit book he was interested in. So it's things like that, which you don't expect, but it's sort of makes part of the trip, and things like that. So.
Sounds like you had a great trip.
Yeah, so it was a great trip, and yeah. So my first overseas one, I got to Conspiracy 87 in Brighton, in England, and my first Worldcon was actually AussieCon 2. That was in Melbourne in '85 in my home city. So Canadian on my third trip was actually my third Worldcon that I got to, and my second overseas.
Mm-hmm. So now, as a FanFun delegate, is this something that you would recommend?
Yes, I definitely recommend it. It's a chance to meet with some people you've corresponded before or you know of, but also meet new fans, and just you get to see basically, as some people said recently, I mean, you find out there might be a certain pub in, say, London, or a certain hotel in Seattle or somewhere like that, where you know that you can walk in and there'll be 20 or 30 people who'll know you. You may not necessarily know them all, but they'll know you. And if you've been there for a short time, you'll get to know them. And I guess that's sort of the family of fandom around the world, that your name gets around and people know you, and they're glad to see you whenever you can get there or turn up, particularly from Australia with such our having to travel nearly everywhere. But I think with the recent Concealand and things like that with Zoom, maybe interaction is getting a bit different. I mean, it used to be by letters and mailed fanzines and emails, but now we're getting more the Zoom and interviews like this face to face.
A wonderful opportunity. Yeah.
Yes, and so with the fan funds, you also, as a delegate, you end up having to run the race a couple of times after you, but you're also involved in fundraising, and you can meet diverse fans through that, and you're always amazed at the generosity and the interesting things that people can come up with fundraising and associated things. Things like which are now available more days, like tuckerizations, which were pretty scarce, and that I believe you see them more and more with writers prepared to offer a tuckerization and putting names and characters in their books.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, I appreciate you coming on and sharing information about your trip and your experience as a delegate. Anything that you would like to add that you think is important that you know, people who might be interested in applying to our capitalized fan fund for Discon III might need to know?
The thing is, you just never know what it's going to be like or what can be involved, and just say go for it. I mean, the various people that have been on fan funds have come from lots of sections of fandom, and if you are in a particular section of fandom or a particular interest, don't let that bar you from doing anything else or being of interest to general fandom and a convention. Conventions are lots of things. They can not necessarily everything to everybody, but there can definitely be a lot of things to specific people or interests. And yeah, it's just always worth a shot. So.
Mm-hmm. Well, Alan Stewart, thank you so much. We appreciate that wonderful report on your experience as a delegate. And do you think you're going to make it to Discon III?
Well, I've got a full membership at the moment. I'm planning to get there, but I can't make any flight bookings or anything like that till the government make announcements and things like that. At the moment, we're forbidden to fly. If a vaccine becomes available and they open the borders, I hope to get there, but it's so many things happening. I'm not sure yet. So,
well, thank you.
Join you there and catch up, but we'll see what happens. Maybe
absolutely.
Maybe there'll be virtual parts. At least I can get to if I can't get there in person.
Definitely. Hey, thank you for supporting the con and for taking the time to talk with me today.
That's okay. Thanks for the interview.